Hello again. We are continuing our video tutorial series on creating cases for New York Noir. In the previous video, I walked through these basic options for configuring your case, and now we're going to proceed through additional sections. Alright, so remember that each section starts with a single pound sign and then the ID of the section. This is the front section, which you'll remember we configured here. In general, when you have a section or a lead, you've got a single word here, which is the ID of this section, and then optionally you've got a longer label. So if I wanted to have some line in the book later that says go to the front section, I would say go to front. That's the ID of this section. And this would be normally what would be displayed on the page, the heading of the page, except in this section, in this case, the front section doesn't actually use a heading. Anyway, front section is for your cover page, your table of contents, your instructions. So let's take a look. Here's the front section, and here's the definition of the cover page. You can see, okay, so here's a syntax to get used to. At least this is how it is currently. Normally, all functions in Casebook begin with a $sign and then the function name and parameters. For sections and subsections, we use this $sign shorthand for arguments. So in other words, this line here is the configuration for this section. You could have also written it like this, but I find it a little more useful to put it on its own line. So basically this is configuring this cover section. So it's saying don't use tombstones, don't use this little symbol at the end of each lead. In fact, can I just show you what those tombstones are in case it's not clear? Let me go to generated files. Let's take a look at this game. Okay, let me just show you what a tombstone symbol looks like there. Okay, there's a little tombstone. It just says, it's just a little marker that says that's the end of this entry. And it's most useful for leads that sometimes span multiple pages. So here's a lead, and you can see the leads normally have these little tombstones. So for things like the cover page and table of contents, we don't want tombstones. So that's what that is. And you'll remember this M style equals hide. You could just leave this off. No harm would happen. This is basically just saying when you make a mind map, I don't need a node for this entry. Mind map is just for your own debugging purposes. Okay, so in the front section, here's our cover page. And I've commented out a line that would put an image on the background of the cover page. You could look up in the reference guide how to use the page background command, but basically it just says take this image and cover the page with it at a certain opacity. Okay, blurb cover page. This is a function that creates this. It creates a default cover page with title, subtitle, author, version information, and a summary. So that's what this one command does. And optionally, we can put in extra stuff in here. Let's just try this. How about this is a demonstration case for the tutorial series. Okay, let me just see what happens if I put text in here. Now, normally any text for the cover page you would grab from here, like from this summary, game summary, if you wanted to add extra text, which is what we've got here. Let's so let's just, for the fun of it, let me add this information here into the command to make a cover page. And let's try rebuilding this. I'm doing Control A to select it all, Control C to copy it. Then I'm going to edit the game. I'm going to paste it in here with our new changes we've made. And hopefully I won't have broken anything by adding these extra tags. All right, so let's try to save and rebuild. So I've told it to save and rebuild in our preferred format. So now we're going to see if we get an error or if it builds. Take a couple minutes. We got a little summary here. You can see it's currently queued. Okay, so it's completed. It's finished building. Now let's take a look at what we've got. Okay, so the text that I added on the blurb command is now here. And you can see here's where our summary is. Remember, I added additional credits. I added this caution here on the last video I did. Sorry, you may not, if you're jumping ahead. Here's my co-authors. I added Sarah the cat. So that's all of these things here that we added on our last video. Here's the summary that is now shown here under summary. And this line here is a little line that we added here. All right. So that's our cover page. Again, you can just leave this exactly as it is in the sample game. There's no need for you to customize all this once you've customized this. All right, table of contents. Here you can see it's the contents section, otherwise known. The nice label is table of contents. And this is the command that generates the table of contents on this page. You can say, I've said no tombstones, solo facing, that means right hand page. This command here is what generates this. Each of our sections and leads and what page number it's on. If we wanted to force that to be a single column layout, we could, but that is the simple command to generate the table of contents there. If you wanted to add extra text at the top of the page, you could do that. Okay, instructions. So here's an instructions section, and you can see it says to play this case you will need the version 2 base set from New York Noir, which is what you'll see here. To play this case you'll need the version 2 base set from New York Noir, and that creates a little link here. This is standard markdown syntax for creating a link. Okay, and now you see some extra commands here and some other stuff. Okay, this little squiggle here, tilde, is just a blank line. So, well, let's go explain these first. Okay, the macro include command grabs another file that's in the casebook syntax and inserts it in. So these are predefined files, pre-existing files that are commonly used in instructions. So normally you can just leave this exactly as it is. You don't have to modify this, but basically it's bringing in the requirements text, bringing in the instructions for time passing, and in this case here's a separate command that is embedding a PDF file. So these are embedding casebook syntax, which is what you're seeing here, and this one is embedding the case log, the first 2 pages of the case log. So these 3 lines here are creating this. So here are the requirements. This text here is what's being brought in with this line. And then this whole text about tracking time and ending your day and overtime and flex time mode is all being brought in from this clock instructions casebook. In fact, it's also bringing in this wrapping up. And then what you see here, the case log, these 2 pages here for the player to write on, are coming in through this command here. So if you had an extra PDF, maybe a custom case log that you wanted, or a custom sheet that you wanted to let people fill out, you could embed it here. If you have a separate file like this, a PDF, you would write the command. Let's say I had a separate additional file, and we'll put it here like additional notes that you wanted to embed in here. You would do it like this, but then you'd have to upload that file. And the way you would do that is you'd go to your game, you'd say uploaded files, you'd click this button here, and you'd upload that PDF that you generated, however you wanted to generate it. And you do the same thing for images. Any images you have for your game, you would upload here. You can drag and drop them here, multiple files at a time. Once those files are uploaded and kept with the game, then you can refer to them in code, either to display an image or to embed a file, etc. So you can embed PDF files or images of various formats. Okay, so that's the instruction section. All right, now we move on to the report section. Now you'll notice the report section, if you look over here in this table of contents, there's no report section. That's because the report section is only produced when you build a debug version of your case, which I'll talk about in a subsequent video. But essentially, this is where you would make your internal notes. This is where I keep my internal notes. So I keep track of what's changed with each version and a to-do list, etc. So you could add your own sections, whatever you wanted here, like problems to fix or things to remember. You know, here is my list of my problems. Okay, so anyway, you can write whatever you want here, and it'll get produced when we make a debug version of the case. That would be an internal version of the case for your own records, or you could just leave this stuff here as useful notes for yourself when you go over the case. All right, let's move along here. Now we've got our days. So you can see here is a section D1 for day 1 and the longer label called day 1. So if we look how it produces in the book, it's labeled as day 1. So D1 is the internal name for this section. So if I want to say, if I want to have an instruction to jump to day 1, I would say go to D1. And then this is the label that gets displayed in the table of contents and on the page. Okay, subsection called introduction, and here it is, introduction. So if we change this to say, you know, preamble, then when we built the case, it would say preamble here. Okay, but let's go back to introduction. Okay, now here's a command called blurb day. That is what generates this, 10 a.m. Thursday, June 10th, 1915. So if we look up the blurb day command here we see how you use this function. The first argument is the number of the day. The second argument tells it what format to display. So I have put here daytime start. So it's listed that the day starts at 10 a.m. on Thursday, June 10th. The way it knows that the day starts at 10 a.m. is because we configured the day right up here. Here's where we configured day 1 starts on June 10th, 1915 at 10 a.m. So it knows that. So when I say put a little blurb about the current day, that's all I have to write, and it knows that it's June 10th, 1915. It figures out that that was a Thursday. It knows that the day was supposed to start at 10 a.m. So it's added that line here. If you weren't using a game that used time, you could just say that the style was day start instead of daytime start. If you put calendar, it'll show a nice little calendar of the day. You've got some various options here that you can configure as well. All right, so that's what creates this line here. That little blurb is there, and then I just write text, whatever I want. I could write a whole page of text here that would be dropped in here. And when you write text, you've got markdown syntax, which you could look up, but essentially markdown syntax, if you wanted to make something bold, you would say it's very important that we do this, and so on. You can have bulleted lists like, here are the important facts, and you can do like item 1, item 2, etc. So you can look up online some information on using the markdown syntax to do things like bold, underline, italics, block quotes like an indented quote, etc. That's all. You can find that information on the web. That's using the markdown syntax for text. Okay, next section. Here's a special kind of section called a blank and a blurb stop. This is what you'll see in a lot of my cases where I want to tell the person, stop reading, go start your day. So this is the blurb stop command. Knows lots of different ways to do these stop warnings. You could write your own text here. You could say stop before you do anything, go, don't read any further, go do this. But you can, I'll show you how this renders in the book. So if we go to the book, you'll see after day 1 on the next page, it says stop reading the casebook now, begin searching for leads in the directories, continue to the next page only when you're ready to end day 1. So this page gets rendered by this instruction. It says start a new subsection after introduction on its own page and use this blurb to start the day for day 1. So if you had a day 2, you'd say blurb start day 2, day equals 2. Okay, then we have the lead section. So after this, we'll have our lead section. And you see in this case, I have a warning at the start of the lead section that gives the generic text about how to not to start reading the lead section. And that is right here. This blurb command, blurb stop leads, is what produces. Now notice I don't have a separate section and a break. That's what puts it right on the same page where the lead section is. If I wanted some text here, I could write it here. If I wrote something here, it would be shown right here. But in my case, I just want the generic blurb stop for leads. And if we look into the reference guide, here are the different kinds of generic stops it knows about. It knows how to make a stop warning about days starting, days ending, about next day, about you're about to enter the questions section, the conclusion section, the lead section. That's what we did. Okay. Do we want to suggest the player takes a break first? We'll see that later. Anyway, so you'll use that blurb stop little helper quite a bit. All right, and then you can see at the level 2 headings under leads are all of our leads. So this would be every little place the person can go to. So this is this is where you'll be doing most of your writing other than your conclusion and your introductions. All of your leads will be here. So for a New York Noir case, you can see the first thing that should follow is the lead number, and then a description, a label if we want, and then the text for the player to read. So if we had a whole bunch of these, let's see how they render. So here is leads. Now notice what it's done. It's created a subsection for 4. That's where, this is a lead that starts with 4. So the leads are organized by starting number, and then they'll be sorted. There's only one here. So you'll see it's just on its own lead section 4. There's only one, and here it is here. So you see here's the lead number. Here's the label I gave it, House of Mr. Brown, which you saw here. Here's the text. We knock on the door, but no one answers. This address has been automatically picked up from the database. It knows that at 42324 is at 50 Gramercy Park North in the Gramercy Park neighborhood. This is being brought in automatically because from our last video, you'll remember I configured the lead section and I said address equals auto. That's what's told it to automatically bring in this address from the database. This box here, time advances 60 minutes, is due again to a section we had here where we said by default every lead is going to be 60 minutes. That's what brought this box in here. Now we could change that for any given lead. For example, here's our lead. If we wanted to make this lead take less time, let's say we could add some options to this lead, and we do that with this $ syntax, and we could say time equals 10. Let's try this. So I'm going to copy it all. Hopefully I've remembered how to do this properly. We're going to paste it in here. So now we've modified this lead to say time equals 10. Let's see if that works. The syntax for that, for the leads, are all up in here. So you can see that's where I've set the time, duration of the lead. You've got lots of other options. You could say whether you want the time instruction to be at the top or the bottom or not shown at all. There's a way to set an automatic lead number. I'll show you that in a little bit. You can tell it that a given lead shouldn't be in the table of contents, lots of stuff. Okay, let's take a look at it. So I'm going to click here on the 4th section of leads, jump down, and you can see now it says time advances 10 minutes. And that came from us setting time here. But if we set time to 0, for example, let's try that. Save and rebuild. So time 0 should remove that line. So if you have a lead where you don't want time to pass, you would just say time 0. Okay, let's jump to this lead. Okay, so you see I've set time 0, so now no mention of time passing here. All right, let's go back. Close these other files. Let's go back. So you can see now how to pass additional options to a lead. If we add, let's add another lead here. Okay, we're going to add a lead, except this one is going to be an auto ID lead. So this is going to be a lead that says like, maybe we'll have a lead called inside the house. That's going to be someplace we send the player to if they do some special action. So it's not a place that's in the directory, so I can't give it something like this, but I do need to give it a name. So we'll call this inside house with a nice label of inside the house. So this is our internal label that we're using to refer to this lead. We'll call it this. And now we're going to say for this, auto lead equals true. I think it's auto lead. Is that right? Auto lead. Yes, automatically assign a lead ID. Okay, so I'm going to say this is an auto lead, and I'm going to say we walk in the house. Okay, and then I'm going to use Google Docs to just highlight this a little better. So now there's a new entry for inside the house that you were asking the game to create a lead ID for. And then maybe from this lead, we can say, if you want to break in the house, go lead inside house. Oops. Okay. So we're going to add a little instruction that says if you want to break into the house, then we're going to tell them go to this lead. And we've written the ID here of this lead. I think go lead is the right syntax. Let's look up go lead. Yeah, okay, so the go lead command, you specify the ID of the lead to go to, and then we can configure how that instruction shows, and then we can say whether we want them to come back. But we'll just leave this as our default. So we've created a new lead called inside house. We've added an instruction to go to it. Let's see what happens if we rebuild this. All right, let's take a look at it now. So if we go to the lead section, we can see we've got a new subsection 2, and here is inside the house. So it's randomly assigned it the lead of 25441, which it knows is a number not used in the directories. Here's the text from walking in the house, again default 60 minutes. Now let's go look at our other section. Okay, here is our previous lead. We knock on the door, but no one answers. And here's the new text that we added. If you want to break in the house, go to 25441, which it says is on page 11. So this line here got translated into this line here, which we can click on. So these PDFs are all actively linked. If we click here, we get to this lead. So that's just an example of creating a lead without a number, asking the system to automatically give it a number. And here's an example of how to reference it. If we didn't want it for some reason to tell the player, if we didn't want it for some reason to tell the player what page number it is, we could change all that by giving different parameters to this go lead. If we said back equals true, then when it created the game, it would say, if you want to break into the house, go to this page and then come back, and so on. But actually, we don't want that. All right, what else can we do here? Do we need to see an example of it picking up the right address? Let's try. Let's try to send someone to Elvin Brands at apartment 1B in the financial district. So 6-4099. So, whoops. 6-4099. Elvin Brands. Let's just do it like that. It does not appear to be home. Again, just to make it look nice, I'm going to ask Google Docs to set that heading. All right, let's just rebuild this as a quick test. All right, so now we've got a section 6. Here's our section 6, Elvin Brands, and you can see it's pulled in the address from our directory, 1 New York Plaza, apartment 1B. It's figured that part out and brought it in and stuck it in. Now, if this was another 4 section, it would alphanumerically sort these. So you don't have to worry about what order you put these in. You don't have to have the 6 before the 4. You put these in whatever order you want. It will automatically sort them into sections and list them in the right order, etc. All right, so that's the lead section where most of your work will be done. Okay, so let me just show you a common example of some code you might write to show you the use of the inline command, because that's one of the most common commands we're going to use. So we'll just combine it with our check of our other tag we add. So I'm going to say if they have the tag has tag and then met Mr. Brown. So this tag here is a tag we added up here. Condition met Mr. Brown. So we're going to use that to track some condition. So I'm going to add to this lead here. If they have this tag, and then we're going to say, we could say go to certain lead here, but I'm going to show you the use of the inline command. So we're going to say inline and then a bracket, and now I can write as long as I want. Since we met Mr. Brown and he told us about how to sneak in, we can, and then here I'll say go lead inside house. And then I'll say otherwise inline, and I'll put some new text here that says something like, without knowing what to do, we decide it's better to wait until later. So let me show you what I'm trying to do here. When they arrive at this place, it's going to check whether they have this condition, whether they've met Mr. Brown. And if so, it's going to tell them to jump to a lead which says this. That's what the inline says. It's a way of, in this lead, creating a new lead that will be dynamically given its own number. Otherwise, if they don't have this tag, create a new lead with its own number that says this. You could show this all on the page without the inlines, but the inlines keeps stuff secret. And then maybe inside the house, we're going to say we meet Mr. Brown and he tells us how to get into Elvin's house. And then I'm going to put gain tag, condition met Mr. Brown. All right, so we got a whole bunch of moving parts here. But now I'm going to give them this tag in this location, and then it's going to check it and give them a branching thing in this location. All right, let's see. I guess otherwise has to be a function here. Okay, so otherwise inline has tag. All right, let's see if this works. Paste it in. Save and rebuild. Okay, probably I've got some error here, but let's see. All right, so we got a whole bunch more leads here. Let's scroll down to the lead section and see what we got. Okay, so here was how we changed when you go inside the house. Remember, we added a thing that says gain tag Mr. Brown. All right, so let's see how that renders. We meet Mr. Brown and he tells us how to get into Elvin's house. Circle marker M in your case log. So that's this line here that says gain tag met Mr. Brown got turned into this box here, circle M. So you can see they don't know that circle M is internally means met Mr. Brown. They just know that it's an M with instruction to do so. And now if we check out Elvin Brand's house, we should see it tested. So let's see in the 6th section if that's right. If you have circled marker M in your case log, go to this lead. Otherwise, go to this lead. That is rendered with this. So if they have tag met Mr. Brown, then this inline, since we met Mr. Brown and told us how to sneak inside, is got put into this newly created lead. So if I click here, it should say whatever is in this inline. Since we met Mr. Brown, he told us how to sneak in, go here. And you can see it's created a new number for it, 25441, a new random number. It's put in its heading that it's a continuation of the Elvin Brand's lead, and even a link how to jump back to it if we lose our place. And then we see this text that was all in the inline. If we go back and do the otherwise inline this. So this text here, without knowing what to do, we decide it's better to wait until later, was put into a new random numbered lead here. So if we click here, we'll see this. It's a continuation of this lead. Without knowing what to do, we decide it's better to wait until later. So that's an example of how in this one lead, with these inlines, we've actually had the game create 2 extra new randomly numbered leads for us. This one and this one, which it's thrown the text into with a nice label that tells the player how to get back where they came from, etc. Sorted in proper order. Now, normally as we have more leads, these subsections will start filling out rather than one for each. But okay, so that just gives you some idea of how to use the most common thing. This inline feature is an extremely useful way to randomly create branching leads. If you didn't want to use inline, you could do it manually. You could say otherwise. So let's look here. It says, otherwise go here. If you have this, go here. Well, you could do that yourself manually. If instead of an inline, you could say, otherwise go lead and then nothing to do, like this. And then instead of an inline, you would create your own new lead called nothing to do. And we could call this, you know, Elvin Brand's continued. And then the text of this lead would be, without knowing what to do, we decide to wait until later. And this is an additional way. And then we'd also have to put here, though, we'd have to say auto lead equals true. In other words, here's a new lead called nothing to do, give it its own unique number, and then from here we jump to this. But the inline, I'm going to undo all this now. The inline is a very quick way to have branching new leads dynamically created for you, given unique numbers and with nice labels that tell the player how to get back where they came from. All right, let's continue looking past the leads section. Documents. Okay. Documents are things that you might tell the person to retrieve. In fact, let's add a line and give them, when they get inside the house, we're going to give them this tag, but we're also going to say gain tag doc.sample. We're also going to tell them they now have access to this document. And we're going to call this sample. This is a typewritten letter. Who wrote it? All right, so we've got a document called docsample. Here we're telling it to format this as if it was written by a typewriter. So formats whatever in between these curly brackets is the contents that this command applies to. If we look up the format function, we can see you can format for typewriter, handwriting, a newspaper, a radio, various things, and you have various control over symbols, whatever. All right, so we're going to give them that document. We'll take a look at that in a second. If we wanted to add another document, we would just call it here, like this was, you know, the DMV report, and then we could give it a nice title. And then maybe we put the contents here. Maybe you want to include an image here of a drawing that you did exterior. You can bring in an image. What is the image command here? Image. So we could say, okay, for this document that I'm now adding, I'm going to say use this image, you know, dmv.jpg, and then I would upload that image you saw here by going to uploaded files, and then it would stick in that image as this document, but we don't have an image, so we're not going to do it yet. Okay, so we've added a reference telling the person that they now have access to this document. When we rebuild that, we'll take a look at that in a second. Again, document section. If you wanted some extra contents here to say something, otherwise it's just going to look like this. There's the blurb stop telling them not to read documents until they're told. Okay, then we've got the end section, which normally would have conclusions, questions, and final scoring, but you can rearrange this any way you want, add sections any way you want. You can see I've got conclusions, questions. All of these logic commands you can ignore. They're just for mind map outlines to help you visualize your case a little bit better. Here's our final scoring subsection in end. And here, this is just some little helper syntax for having a blank line where they could write something out. I tend to like to have a behind the scenes section. So let me just, here is behind the scenes postscript from the author. And here is a parameter called TOC, which says change the table of contents entry to be this. So if you look here, here is this section, behind the scenes postscript from the author, but you can see the table of contents bookmarks in the PDF is a little bit shorter. That's what this did. It just said in the table of contents and the bookmarks, use a shorter thing. Again, subsections, you would write whatever you want here. Then we've got the hints section. Now, hints are used for hints for markers. So we have this condition, Mr. Brown. So it would be nice of us to write a hint for that. So let's try it here. Let's see if I can get this right. So for the hint, we just write the name, the ID of the tag that we're going to give the hint for. Okay, and then we would write our hint, like think about how to get inside Mr. Brown's house so that you could meet him. And there's lots of other things we could do in hints, like we could tell the person they should get some demerits. See if I can remember how to do demerits. Mark. Okay. So I could say mark demerits, oh no, like this, mark demerits equals 2, like that. Mark demerits equals 2, should be a number. Okay, let's try this. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm going to paste it back in and rebuild it. So I made 2 changes. I added a hint. And what else did I add? I added text to the document. Oh, I added text to let them gain this document here inside the house. All right, let's see how it works. All right, so where did we give them access to the document? Okay, circle document 1 in your case log. You now have gained access to document 1, the sample document, which can be found at the back of this casebook on page 21. So this line here, gain tag sample document, resulted in this box being added to your case. It tells them what it is, that it's the sample document. It tells them what page it can be found on. So if we click on page 21, we'll see the sample document rendered as if it was a typewritten text. That is what is specified here. For the sample document, format this text in typewriter format. So you can see it's knows what the label of this document is because we configured that up in the beginning when we configured this item here. That's how it knows it's called sample document, and it's rendered it as typewriter text. Now let's see if the hints worked. So if we go to the hints section, we now have a hint for marker M. Think about how to get inside Mr. Brown's house so you could meet him, and then we've said they get a little penalty for checking out that hint. So hint for marker M is what this rendered as. Now notice when you're writing it as the author, you're always referring to these things by their full names. Condition met Mr. Brown. That will help you in writing your case keep things in mind, not forget. What does marker M stand for? It's the game that knows it's decided every time we refer to condition met Mr. Brown, it knows that's really the marker M. And in fact, there's another little trick for hints. We can say, if you still need help. I forget if I should put if you still need help. Let's see what happens. Auto hint. Is it just like that? Let me just see. Auto hint. Demerits 3. I don't think I need to say if you still need help. Let me just try. Auto hint. I guess it did want the Mr. Brown. Okay. And demerits equals 3. So this is, most hints should end with the various things that they could do, various hints. And then at the end you can put an auto hint. Let's see what that looks like. In fact, let's do one more thing. A very common thing in New York Noir is to have tags that must be found on each day. So we've added this tag here of meeting Mr. Brown. And let me remind myself that we can set a deadline. Okay, So I'm going to say the condition for Mr. Brown has a deadline of day 1. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to paste that in and tell it to rebuild. Let's see how that works. All right, now let's go to day 1. All right, so that was not a great thing, that deadline, but let's look at our hints. All right, so when we said that auto hint, which was here, auto hint for condition Mr. Brown, that renders as this. If you still need help, as a last resort, mark 3 demerits, then visit the following lead where this item is obtained. So this is sort of like an emergency. If they really can't find it, this automatically tells them where to go. The game knows where this is assigned, so it's stuck it in here. If we click here, we'll see circle marker M. So that's how the auto hints work. Now the other thing with the deadline that I showed you didn't work because I've forgotten how to tell the person, how to tell you what you need to find it each day. So I've forgotten how to use the deadline, so that'll have to be another video. All right, well, there you have it. You've seen some basic stuff, how to write the leads, a few basic things you can do with the leads, how to write hints, basically how these named tags work, how the game will automatically add nice text telling the person when to mark a tag, and how to check a tag. And you saw, most importantly, how to use the inline feature in your leads so that you can very quickly write branching paragraphs that get put in different places in the book so that nothing else is given away. There you have it, tutorial 3. In the next tutorial, we'll look at some more advanced stuff.